She saw the car before she saw the woman. It waited in the hospital parking lot like a promise that had learned to shine, pearl white, still breathing heat into the cold morning. The smell of antiseptic followed Myra out through the sliding doors, clung to her coat, threaded her hair. She stopped because something in her chest tugged hard, a wrongness she had felt before, a quiet premonition that did not shout but insisted. The woman leaned against the hood as if she belonged there. Not young, not old. Smooth shoes. A red scarf that caught the wind and flirted with it. Her phone glowed in her hand, a smile touching the corner of her mouth like a secret being rehearsed. Myra stood with her keys pressing crescents into her palm, feeling the tremor in her hands she thought she had learned to hide. She told herself to keep walking. She told herself the parking lot was not a courtroom. She told herself she was tired, that grief made illusions. But the woman looked up. Their eyes met. Recognition traveled across the space between them with the speed of a bruise blooming. "You're Myra," the woman said, like it was a kindness. The sound of her name made Myra's breath slip. She had learned, in these months, that names were doors. She had learned to stand very still when one opened without her consent. "I'm sorry," the woman went on, touching the scarf, smoothing it as if smoothing herself. "I don't usually do this. But I thought you should know. He got me a car. He said you'd understand. He said you'd want him happy." He had a way of saying things that left other people holding the bag of meaning. Myra pictured his hands on the steering wheel of this new thing, the care he used to take with hers, the small circular rub of his thumb when he was thinking. She pictured him practicing the speech, the way he practiced everything. Thoughtful. Gentle. Persuasive. The woman's eyes traveled Myra's coat, the frayed hem, the hospital bracelet she had forgotten to remove. The woman's gaze softened, a practiced sympathy. "It's nothing flashy," she said. "But it's mine." Myra heard herself ask, "What color?" The woman smiled, relieved by the normalcy of it. "Pearl. He knows I like things that don't scream." Myra nodded. Pearl. The word settled into her mouth and did not dissolve. She felt the small ache in her jaw that came when she held herself too tight. She had not planned to speak. Her mouth opened anyway. "He bought me a car once," she said, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. "After my first miscarriage. He said he couldn't fix what mattered, so he fixed what he could." The woman blinked. The scarf fluttered again, uncertain now. "I didn't know." Myra shrugged, a small movement that felt like a tear. "There's a lot you don't know." The woman shifted her weight, the heel of her shoe clicking against the asphalt, the sound echoing too loudly. "I didn't come to hurt you. I wanted to be honest." Honesty. The word tasted metallic. Myra thought of nights folded around each other like linens, of conversations where the truth was a guest invited but never seated. She thought of the way he slept facing away from her now, a geography of backs. She took a step closer to the car. The paint reflected her face, pale, the eyes rimmed with a red she could not erase. The car smelled new, clean, like nothing had ever gone wrong inside it. She put her hand on the hood and felt warmth. The woman watched, nervous, like a child with a new pet unsure of its temper. "He's very generous," the woman said, as if generosity were a weather pattern. "Yes," Myra said. "He always has been." The memory arrived uninvited. A night years ago when he brought home oranges in winter because she had said, casually, she missed the smell of them. The way he peeled one for her, the juice running down his wrist, the bright, foolish joy of it. She closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, the woman was still there. "You should know," the woman said, lowering her voice. "He told me he was done. He said it was complicated, but over. He said you were strong." Myra laughed, a small, broken sound she did not recognize. Strong was a word people used when they wanted to leave. She thought of the doctor upstairs with his careful sentences, the way he had avoided her eyes. She thought of the folder in her bag, the thin paper that weighed more than any car. She reached into the pocket of her coat. The paper crackled, eager. She had meant to read it alone, to let the words land in private. But there was something about the morning, the car, the woman, that rearranged her plans. "I suppose," Myra said slowly, "if he bought you a car, he told you everything." The woman nodded, relief blooming again. He doesn't keep secrets from me. Myra unfolded the paper. The letters were black and exact. She read them not with her eyes but with her skin, with the place just below her ribs that had learned new languages. She held the paper between two fingers, careful, as if it might bruise. The woman leaned in, curious despite herself. What is it? Myra looked up. She felt the weight of the moment settle, not dramatic, just heavy, like a door you have to hold for someone else while your arms shake. It's his signature, Myra said softly. On the consent form. He agreed to donate. The woman frowned, confusion stitching her face. Donate what? Myra folded the paper back into her pocket. She met the woman's eyes and did not look away. The last thing we had, she said. The parking lot went very quiet. Even the car seemed to stop shining. The woman did not speak for a long time. Myra watched the silence move across her face, watched understanding stumble, then stop, then try again. The parking lot felt suddenly public, too open, every car a witness, every passing nurse a judge who would never know the charges. Donate, the woman repeated finally, like a word learned in another language. Donate, what? Myra leaned back against her own car, the old one, the one with the cracked dashboard and the faint smell of spilled coffee that never quite left. She felt the cold through her coat. She welcomed it. Cold was honest. He signed the papers, Myra said. They needed his consent. He didn't hesitate. The woman's mouth opened, closed. Her hands found the scarf again, twisting it now, the red a little too loud in the pale morning. I don't understand. You will, Myra said. She was surprised again by her calm. It felt borrowed, like a coat left behind by someone braver. Eventually. The woman looked toward the hospital doors as if answers might spill out with the next patient. He told me you were sick, she said. He said you needed time. Myra nodded. She thought of time as a room she had been locked inside, measuring its walls with her breath. I do, she said. Just not the kind he meant. A memory pressed in, unwanted. The night he had sat on the edge of the bed, tying his shoes with too much care. The way he had said, I'll be back late, don't wait up, and kissed her forehead like a habit he hadn't yet broken. She had known then. Not about the woman. About the leaving. The body knows things the mind refuses. The woman swallowed. What did he donate? Myra closed her eyes. She saw the ultrasound room, dim and humming, the technician's polite silence. She saw the doctor's hands folded, the way he said her name too often, as if anchoring her to the chair. She opened her eyes again. Hope, she said first, because it was easier. Then, quieter, cells. Pieces. The chance to try again. The woman stared. The car behind her seemed to shrink, embarrassed. I didn't know, she said again, but this time the words were thinner, less useful. He never said. No, Myra agreed. He wouldn't. They stood there, two women bound by the same man in different ways, neither of them winning. A gull cried overhead, sharp and lonely. Myra thought of the way grief makes animals out of us, how it sharpens sounds and dulls colors, how it leaves you standing in places you didn't plan to be. He told me, the woman said, slowly, that he couldn't give you what you wanted anymore. Myra smiled, a small, crooked thing. He said that to me too, she said. Just not with words. The woman's eyes filled, to her own surprise. Tears always surprised people. They arrived like a verdict. I didn't mean to take, she said. I didn't think there was anything left to take. Myra considered this. She thought of all the small thefts that never feel like crimes. Time. Attention. The future you imagine with someone else's hands. There always is, she said. Even when you think the shelves are empty. A nurse walked past, nodding politely. The world kept its appointments. Myra felt a sudden, deep tiredness, the kind that sinks into bones. She reached into her bag and took out the folder. The woman flinched, as if expecting a weapon. They told me, Myra said, that what he signed for might work. Not for me. For someone else. The woman's breath caught. Someone else. Yes. A long pause. The woman's face went pale beneath her makeup. Me. Myra did not answer immediately. She watched the woman's hope leap forward, then hesitate, unsure if it was allowed. Myra thought of the consent form again, his signature clean and certain. She thought of the conversation she had overheard by accident, his voice lowered, urgent, saying, "She deserves a chance." "You were part of the equation," Myra said carefully. "I don't think he told you that part." The woman shook her head, once, hard. "No," she whispered. He said it was over with you." Myra felt the old ache flare, sharp and familiar. "He's very good at endings," she said. "He practices them long before anyone else hears the music stop." The woman covered her mouth. Tears spilled now, messy and unplanned. "I can't," she said. "I didn't agree to this." Myra nodded. "Neither did I." They stood like that, the space between them filled with what could not be unsaid. The pearl car gleamed uselessly. Myra felt a strange tenderness for the woman, this stranger who had arrived carrying news like a gift and found it was a mirror. "I should go," the woman said, though she did not move. "Yes," Myra said. "You should." The woman hesitated. "What will you do?" Myra thought of the empty apartment, the bed that held only one shape now. She thought of the call she would not make. "I'll breathe," she said. "That's enough for today." The woman nodded, small. She reached for the car door, then stopped. "I'm sorry," she said, finally meaning it. Myra watched her drive away, the pearl car slipping into traffic, just another bright thing disappearing. When it was gone, Myra stood alone. She took the consent form from her pocket and held it up to the light. The signature was unmistakable. She folded the paper once more and placed it back where it belonged, against her heart, where it hurt and healed at the same time. He came home late, careful with the door, as if quiet could be a kindness. Myra was at the kitchen table, the light above her dimmed to its lowest setting, a cup gone cold between her hands. The apartment smelled like nothing, the way places do after you've emptied them of ritual. He paused when he saw her, keys still in his hand, the metal catching the light. For a moment he looked like a guest who had arrived early to his own life. "You're up," he said. "Yes," she said. It felt important to agree with something simple. He set the keys down, one by one, aligning them without realizing he was doing it. He did that when he was anxious. She had loved that about him once, the way his body confessed what his mouth refused. "I heard from the clinic," he said. "They said you were discharged." "They did." Silence slid in. It always did. He sat across from her, the table between them like a border neither knew how to cross anymore. He looked tired, a good tired, the kind that suggested purpose. It hurt more than anger would have. "I saw her," Myra said. He closed his eyes, just briefly. The flinch was small but complete. "I didn't want you to." "I know." He waited, the way he waited for doctors to finish speaking, for storms to pass. She watched him watch her, felt the old familiarity tug. She could still predict his pauses. That knowledge felt like grief's aftertaste. "She told you," he said. "Yes." He nodded, once. "I meant to tell you myself." "You always do," Myra said. "Eventually." He leaned back, rubbed his hands together. "I didn't think it would happen like this." "Nothing ever does." He looked up then, really looked. "Are you angry?" She considered the question carefully. Anger was loud. Anger wanted to rearrange furniture. What she felt was quieter. "No," she said. "I'm tired." His shoulders sagged with relief he tried to hide. "I did what I thought was right." "For who?" He hesitated. That was answer enough. "I didn't think it would hurt you this way." Myra smiled faintly. "It always does," she said. "Just not the way you expect." He reached across the table, then stopped himself, his hand hovering like a question he didn't want answered. "I wanted to give her a chance," he said. "To give something good a place to land." Myra pictured the consent form again, the confidence of his signature. "You gave away something you didn't know how to hold anymore," she said. "That's not generosity. It's relief." He winced, the truth finding its mark. "I couldn't stay," he said quietly. Every time I looked at you, I saw what we couldn't fix. She nodded. And when you look at her? He didn't answer right away. The refrigerator hummed, faithful. Outside, a car passed, its headlights briefly painting the wall. I see possibility, he said. Myra breathed in. The word settled, heavy and light at once. Possibility needs room, she said. It always asks for more than it promises. He watched her, something like admiration crossing his face, the old reflex. You're stronger than you think. She almost laughed. Please don't, she said gently. Not tonight. Another silence. This one was different, less sharp. He stood, went to the sink, filled a glass of water he did not drink. He stared out the window as if the city might explain him to himself. I'll stay with a friend tonight, he said. That would be wise. He turned back. I never meant to hurt you. I know. That was the hardest part. Knowing did not soften the edges. It just named them. He gathered a few things, efficient, apologetic. At the door, he paused. I hope, he said, then stopped. Words abandoned him. He nodded instead and left. The door closed with a sound that felt final and ordinary all at once. Myra remained at the table long after. She listened to the apartment settle, to the small noises she would now be responsible for alone. She took the folder from her bag and opened it, read the lines she already knew by heart. Somewhere, a woman slept with a new future beating quietly inside her, borrowed and brave. Myra folded the papers, placed them in the drawer with the silverware. She turned off the light and stood in the dark, breathing, letting the quiet finish what the day had begun. Morning came without asking permission. Myra woke to light touching the ceiling, pale and unsure, as if it might retreat if noticed. The bed held the shape of her alone, a geography she was still learning. She lay still, counting breaths, letting the day approach at its own speed. There was no urgency left in her body, only weight. She made coffee and forgot to drink it. She stood at the window and watched a woman across the street buckle a child into a car seat, the practiced choreography of it. Myra pressed her forehead to the glass, felt the cool steadiness. She did not cry. Tears had become inefficient, like an old language she no longer needed. At noon, she walked. The city received her without comment. Sidewalks, pigeons, the smell of bread from a corner shop. Ordinary mercies. She passed a dealership and did not look at the cars. She passed the hospital and slowed, then kept going. She was learning the shape of her own refusal. Her phone vibrated once in her pocket. She did not check it. Some messages were heavy enough to wait. She ended up at the river, the one she and her husband had crossed so many times without seeing. The water moved with a patience that felt earned. She sat on a bench and let the sun warm her face. She thought of the woman in the pearl car, of the careful way her hope had asked for permission. She thought of the man she had loved, the man who had signed his name and stepped away. There was a letter in her bag. She took it out now, the envelope already soft from being carried. She had written it the night before, slow and exact, choosing words that did not bruise. She had not addressed it yet. Names mattered. She turned the paper over, felt its thin authority. She wrote to the woman. Not to accuse. Not to warn. She wrote about the body, how it remembers even when the mind moves on. She wrote about generosity and its shadows. She wrote one sentence only about the thing they shared, and then she stopped. She did not offer advice. She did not ask for gratitude. She signed it simply, Myra, and folded it. She did not know if she would send it. Writing was sometimes enough. The phone vibrated again. She checked it this time. A message from him. I hope you're okay. She considered the word hope, how easily it traveled, how little it carried. She did not reply. Silence was not punishment. It was boundary. She stood, stretched her stiff legs, and walked back toward home. On the way, she bought a small plant from a man with dirt under his nails. He wrapped it carefully, as if it were fragile, as if it mattered. She liked that. In the apartment, she placed the plant on the windowsill. The green startled the room, alive and unapologetic. She watered it too much, then laughed quietly at herself. Learning involved mistakes. She opened the drawer and took out the consent form one last time. She read his signature, felt the old ache rise and fall like a wave that knew where it was going. She did not tear the paper. She did not frame it. She folded it smaller, until it was a compact thing, and placed it in the back of the drawer. Not buried. Just put away. That evening, she cooked for one. She burned the onions slightly and ate them anyway. She washed the dishes immediately, a new habit forming without announcement. She turned on the radio low and let voices fill the corners she no longer needed to occupy with memory. As night settled, she stepped onto the balcony. The city breathed below her, a million lives brushing past each other, mostly unharmed. She thought of the future not as a promise but as a practice. Something you show up to. Something you fail at and return to. Inside, her phone lay face down. Somewhere else, a Pearl car sat cooling, its engine quiet. Somewhere else, a man tried to learn the weight of his choices. Somewhere else, a possibility grew, cell by cell, unaware of the cost of its arrival. Myra went back inside and turned off the lights. In the dark, she placed a hand on her own chest and felt the steady work there, the unglamorous miracle of it. She stood like that for a long moment, neither waiting nor reaching. Just breathing.